You're watching the 12th Conference on National Scenic and Historic Trails, and this is Trail Management with Steve Dudley and Mike Dawson.
Managing diversity, especially cultural diversity, is very, perhaps the most difficult aspect of building a board and maintaining a board. And if you're going to have a diverse board, culturally, ethnically diverse board, you have to build in a lot of tolerance for things that are different than happened in the past, so that the voices of the other cultures, whether it's the tribal culture or the youth culture, can be heard and resonate and make a difference. So often we say we want people from other ethnicities and other age brackets or gender brackets to be part of our board, but we don't form the conduits by which their, quote, strange or maybe different ideas can really resonate and affect the decisions that the board makes. When they get on the board, they're expected to conform. And so I know we've been very careful about going into that area because we don't feel culturally we're ready yet to absorb that kind of tolerance. We have to work hard as an organization to build tolerance for different opinions that may not apparently seem valuable to us, but that they are being expressed by a group of people that we want to be part of our organization. And we have to learn together how to be tolerant and bring value.
It's my job, I guess, as a 75-year-old, is to try to, I guess it would be listed fundraising, because I'm the one that, informs all the members that they're behind on the dues, and then I try to get people to join our organization. So I guess I'm part of fundraising. And plus, I do know something about this people, so I try to tell people about it.
There's a question in the back here.
How important do you think recognition and celebration of the volunteers are? Is that something that you're paying much attention to? And especially the challenge for the long distance trail, getting people together so that it can be a celebration.
Yeah, I think it's. I think there are lots of pieces to that. PCTA spends a lot of time and effort, and so do our Forest Service partners, making sure that people who are doing the work know that somebody appreciates it. And to some extent, that has to do with sending somebody a letter and a pin or a T-shirt or whatever for the work that they're doing. But I think more important, it's what people take out of the fact that the agency and the organization are willing to invest in people, to build their skills, to build their capability to do their work, to make sure that they have the tools, the supplies, everything they need to do their work in the field. I think that speaks volumes beyond giving somebody a certificate.
Another question back here.
Mike, I think a question for you. With all of our trails are spread out over multiple states or long distance areas typically.
Yep.
And you referenced having 5 and the goal is 6 regional offices. Kind of a three-part question. How do you communicate, with diverse partnerships, diverse needs? Some might need more maintenance, some might need trail construction. All those needs out there might be to create more partnerships, what have you, raise money. How do you communicate amongst those 5 offices, and then how do you develop, I suppose, specific goals to each, and then how do you go to the next step in performance evaluations so that you made progress?
Sure. And let's see. I guess one of the things that I would say is the communications piece of this is easier than ever. I mean, right now, I'm the director of trail operations for PCTA. And I live outside of Seattle, and our main office is in Sacramento, California. I mean, the world has changed in a big way in terms of transportation, communications, how people communicate with one another. That makes it a lot easier right off the bat. But it's important that you have a tight-knit staff that communicates a lot and that sees each other face to face a lot. I mean, we have a staff retreat once a year, and every person who works for our organization on a permanent basis is in the room when we have the staff retreat. And you know, from folks who are doing clerical work, or fundraising, or taking care of our computer systems, to folks who are managing trail crews and so forth. And then trail operations, the folks who are all involved in, you know, management and protection of the trail. We meet probably face to face 3 times a year. We use events like this as a way to do part of that, because we'll gather our staff together at something like this, and then, you know, we get to have time to interchange and so forth. Is that?
How about the goals and the performance appraisal process?
Yeah.
Do that?
So that's another interesting thing that came out of this strategic planning process that I described. I had worked in, you know, professionally in trails with organizations for 26 years before I was involved in a strategic planning process that the result of it was not a nice thick document that somebody stuck on a shelf and paid no attention to. You know, this is the first time I have worked in an organization that has successfully done this. So, you know, we had a really great strategic planning process that involved a lot of people. We came up with goals. We set benchmarks, measurable things that could be attained to move us towards those goals. And all of our staff uses that strategic plan all the time. When we figure out how they're doing or what they're going to do in the next year, they go to the plan and say, okay, well, you know, benchmark says the organization's going to have 75,000 hours of volunteer work in 2012. So my region ought to be contributing 1/6 of those. And so what am I going to do to reach that benchmark? And it's, you know, it's been a really interesting situation, because that's not a situation that I've ever had before in my professional career.
My name is Wyla Taleni, and I'm from the Awakakai Trail Association. We're new. And just thank you for all your knowledge. We're really new, but it's interesting because we kind of operate a little differently, probably because of our situation. We're not running pretty much across states, but we're running across different amuas, different land sections, segments. So I kind of relate it that way. One thing that we do is our board members are considered charter members, and we're basically just and what we've done is every single person on the board has what we've done. I'm from the Awakakai Trail Association, and we're brand new. We're really babies compared to all these other associations. But one of the things that we've done that's really different on our board is our board consists of board members, and we make sure that each one of our board members, we have like a track record to some degree and of what our interests are and what we bring to the table. And what we do that's really different, what we've discovered, or I'm discovering now, is no matter what segment or what committee that you're dealing with, it somehow always ends up with education. You know, we're sort of realizing, for example, you mentioned how do we bring the people onto the trail? How do we find volunteers to clean the trail? Well, we're finding out that if we go to our communities and it's like, for example, to create volunteers, bring the schools in. You know, go to the schools.
That's about as far as we're going to go here on Part 7. Stay tuned for Part 8 on the National Trail Conference. Missoula, Montana.